Hey everyone, so today we're featuring a work-in-progress mod called FLORA by mod author Spiffyskytrooper. If you're at all familiar with Fallout modding and you don't know his name, you're probably at least familiar with some of the mods he's made. Just to name a handful, we have Realistic Roads, Rust Belt FLORA, Dust Bowl Overhaul, Ice Pick Overhaul, or ReGrowth Overhaul. In fact, every one of those has been featured on this channel in the past. But we're not here to talk about the past, we're here to talk about the brand new work in progress. I had the opportunity to do a live interview with Spiff about the upcoming mod, to ask him about what the project is, some of the goals, general information, and other cool features that might be added. So first I'm going to briefly explain what we're looking at here for a little background info, then play you the interview. I will also include various timestamps in the description for your convenience. So that said, enjoy footage of the mod so far captured by Spiff himself, and enjoy the show. FLORA is an ambitious work-in-progress mod for Fallout 4 by Spiffyskytrooper. The goal is to create the most realistic green mod to date, taking both real-world realism and Fallout lore into account, while also keeping performance a high priority. There will be different regions across the map where vegetation grows stronger or weaker depending on the land textures, which gives this mod variety while also adding to realism. Expect to see many different types of trees, a wide array of different kinds of grass, a broad spectrum of colors, and numerous types of ground textures. The plan right now is to release this on both PC and Xbox One, which is great because console players tend to miss out on many of these epic environmental mods due to console limitations, so it's great to see that the author is taking console into consideration. Overall, expect to see a green mod like no other. Once released, this will be a welcome addition to the pool of green mods for Fallout 4. So now that we have a general idea of what the mod is, let's jump into the interview. Alright, so first of all, thanks for being a part of this, man. Appreciate you coming out tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
So what is Project FLORA?
So FLORA is actually an acronym. It stands for Fallout Landscapes Overhaul and Revised Atmosphere.
Oh, nice.
So obviously the landscapes part is pretty self-explanatory. There's going to be a lot of new trees and a lot of new flora, hence the acronym in the game.
Yep.
And the revised atmosphere sort of hints towards biomes that are being added. Because obviously in Fallout 4 it's all kind of one drab atmosphere, whereas with this mod, it's going to be one. It's going to be different regions, right? So you're going to have like a pine region and an elm region and swamps and all that fun stuff. So another thing I should probably mention with the mod is that I'm trying to make it realistic and lore friendly, and that can often be a hard line to balance because obviously Fallout 4 isn't a very realistic game and implements a lot of lore that kind of goes against realistic standards. But I'm trying to do my best to kind of keep the balance.
Wow, nice. So did you have any specific goals in mind when you started?
One of my biggest goals was to keep the pre-combines intact. And for people who don't know, pre-combines are like a magic thing in Fallout that it basically calculates the meshes in a certain region and combines them into one mesh. So it's kind of like preloaded, and it really helps performance. But with a lot of FLORA mods, including my own, pre-combines have to be disabled because the pre-combines will basically tell the game that these meshes have to look this way no matter what. So obviously if you replace a tree, then it's going to look like the vanilla tree, not the tree that you replaced. So like mods like ReGrowth, I had to disable pre-combine, but it can absolutely destroy frame rate because it's used as a performance thing. So performance was definitely at the top of my list. And obviously this isn't going to be the most performance friendly mod because the more polygons you add in, your frame rate will differ.
Yeah, it's always kind of expected to, when using a green mod, your FPS always kind of takes a hit, especially on console or something. But
the pre-combines were definitely up there because that's one of the biggest killers of frame rate.
Good, yeah, that's awesome to know.
As I mentioned previously, the realism and the lore is really up there for me. I could actually expand on that by saying personally, I don't think that Fallout's lore on FLORA is really established. I'm talking about FLORA in the actual world. Because you have games like the original Fallouts where obviously it's in a desert, so it's very sparse, but the flora still exists and they're still green. And then you have games like Fallout 3 where it takes place 200 years later, but it's so drab and dead. And then you have games like New Vegas where obviously it wasn't hit as badly, but there's still a lot of green in Zion and in the world itself. So I'm kind of trying to flesh that out, kind of trying to say, it doesn't all necessarily have to be dead. And there's a lot of hints in Fallout 4 that the flora isn't exactly dead. If you look at agriculture, even throughout all the games, the fact that you can simply grow tomatoes in the ground signifies that the flora isn't as dead as the games would lead you to believe. Yeah.
So you've created many environmental mods in the past, but I kind of want to focus on one in particular, and you've already kind of touched on it, which is ReGrowth. Now, obviously ReGrowth is crazy epic, but how does that in FLORA differ?
So obviously I mentioned the pre-combines, which is one of the biggest points when you get down to the technical level, because ReGrowth, although it looks great, on technical level, it's an absolute mess. I actually wouldn't recommend you use regrowth once this mod comes out. Of course, there's a little bit of bias there, but you know, but I think that the biggest thing with this mod that differs from regrowth and even all of my other mods is the fact that there's regions and that there's lore behind the regions. It's not just like basically throwing things in, right? You know, with Flora, it's a lot of green. It's a lot of the same. Or not with Flora, with regrowth, it's a lot of the same, a lot of green. Or when with Flora, it's going to be a lot, it's going to be a little more well thought out and not as. It's the best way to phrase it is it won't be an ocean of green. You know what I mean? There's going to be different areas and different things to look at.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I was looking at some of the video footage that you had sent me. It seemed there was so much variety with Flora, and that was something I think that was like really, really cool, and it stuck out to me. And you're kind of right. Like in my time with regrowth, it does kind of seem like an ocean of green. It's a little repetitive, but it's well done.
It can get boring in its own right.
Yeah.
Just seeing the same green over and over again, I think.
Right. Yeah. And to kind of rebound off the last question, and I've used regrowth, I've used it a lot. It kind of kills my Xbox, but I noticed these like little butterflies and stuff flying around in the grass, or maybe those are like leaves blowing in the wind or something. But do you have any plans on doing anything like that with Flora? Like having, I don't know, like insects fly around or something?
So I've played around with a few ideas that don't quite relate to the Flora itself. I don't want to guarantee anything because it's really just dependent on what I can get done and the resources I can use. As far as you are right, there's butterflies in regrowth. Or what I tried to do was I replaced the floating leaf texture with a monarch butterfly, and I just rotated it every frame so it kind of looked like it was fluttering around.
That's how you did that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But in terms of tiny little details, one of the biggest things I'm doing, I'd say, is I'm separating the mod on Xbox and PC. There's going to be a grass module and there's going to be the main mod. So for the tiny little details, there's going to be a grass and ground covers. And then there's also going to be things like lily pads in the swamps. I don't think I sent you any footage of that because the swamps are still a little iffy on how they look because I'm still kind of playing with it. But there's going to be lily pads and some land textures. So it's not going to quite be as subtle as butterflies, but I am doing other little things that don't directly relate to trees that kind of bring the mod together. There's little touches here and there.
Yeah. Awesome. So we've already kind of discussed this, but will this be on Xbox too?
So the short answer to that is yes. I'll do my best to put it on Xbox. I try to put everything that I make on Xbox. Obviously with Xbox, it can be a little iffy with optimization, especially with Flora mods, because you don't have as much range as a PC with upgrades. Something I've been trying to do with my Xbox mods recently is the textures. I'll try and lower the resolution of some textures. Like I might make, and for anyone who doesn't know, the diffuse of a texture is basically like the color, and then the normal map is what gives it the details, and the specular is what makes it react to light in certain ways. So I'll keep the diffuse texture at like 2K resolution, and then I'll lower the normal maps and the speculars to 1K. And that not only helps with the optimization, but it also helps with storage, like, because you only have a limited space on Xbox. One of the biggest killers for mods is texture resolution. For an example, I was working on some textures recently, and the 4K version of it was something like 23 megabytes, and as soon as I put it down to 2K, it was 5 megabytes. Wow. So that's how extreme the texture resolution can affect things.
Wow.
But short answer, yes, I'm going to try my best to put it on Xbox. I don't know if it's going to be to the capacity that it is on PC, but I try and put everything that I make on Xbox in some way or another.
That's really cool to hear that you always keep Xbox in mind, So there's obviously a lot going on with this mod, You said something earlier about different regions where the growth differs. Could you elaborate on those just a little bit?
Sure. So yeah, I don't want to start a flame war in your comments or anything, but one of my biggest inspirations for the regions was Fallout 76. And as much as I personally don't like the game, I think that one of the things Fallout 76 did well is using regions to kind of separate and have very dignified or signified whatever the word is, areas. So I think one of the first things you're going to notice is the Pine region. The Pine region is really prominent. You can see it in a lot of the footage. And obviously that's going to cover, I think I sent you a map. You can show that too.
Yeah, I'll put that on screen now.
So the greenness will be generally the pines and the elms, and then the brown is going to be where you're going to see a lot of the aspens and dead flora, and then that yellow spot near the bottom is where there's going to be the swamps. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to keep it realistic. So I'm kind of going in and I'm looking at what was in that region to begin with, and I'm building off that. So if you go to the northern foothills near the top of the map, you're going to see a lot of elm trees. So obviously in that area, I'm putting a lot more living elms. And if you go to where Fort Hagen is, you're going to see a lot of what I assume to be pine trees. So you're going to see a lot of pines and firs. And then in the middle of the map, it's more so maples and aspens and stuff like that.
Wow.
So
this sounds pretty complex, man.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm not trying to boast or anything, but another thing to mention is because I'm avoiding the pre-combines, every single tree is hand placed, so it really gives me room to kind of kind of flesh the regions out. So one thing you'll notice too is when you're transitioning from the pine region to the dry region, you'll actually start to see the flora go from green, and you'll slowly start to see a little more brown in there.
I noticed
until you
that.
get to the until you get to the drier and the green region.
Yeah, when you sent me some of that footage, I was like, holy crap! Like, there's a lot going on here. Like, it's not just green, it's not just brown. It's like this is really impressive stuff.
And obviously, like I said earlier, I'm trying to keep it realistic. So you'll notice a lot of the green isn't like nice, saturated, summer-looking green.
Right.
I still try and take into account that it's fallout and it's dead. So while at night might not quite be completely dead, it's also kind of not quite fully living. It's just kind of floating in the realm of,
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking about the colors and the hand-placed trees and everything else. So that kind of brings up the question, how long have you been working on this for?
As of right now, I'd say it's been about 3 or 4 months that I've really started working on it. I actually started this mod, probably, it'd be quite a few months now, like a lot more than 3 or 4, because I was working on an update for ReGrowth Overhaul that meant to kind of fix the performance, but that kind of led me off into this own path with Flora, where I was exploring the different regions and stuff. So it's definitely been a few months. I kind of been working on it on and off between other little projects because I don't like to get burnt out on one thing. And to bring another mod into it, that's a good example, is I made the Lost Vault 2, and that mod spanned over, I don't want to scare you because it's definitely not going to take 2 years for this one, but that mod spanned over 2 years. But a lot of that was just me taking breaks because I didn't want to get burnt out on doing the same thing day in and day out.
Absolutely.
But my main thing has been is I'm trying to spend a few hours on this whenever I have some free time. But it's been a few months on and off.
Yeah, nice. So the big question, and feel free to not answer this if you don't want to, but do you have like a rough release date in mind? Not to like add pressure or anything, just wondering if you've thought that far ahead yet.
Ideally, and again, I don't want to like you said, I don't want to kind of put something out there and then have people disappointed if it doesn't come. But ideally, I would love to have this mod out by the beginning or middle of summer, and that's if I can just keep working at it. But obviously, there's a lot of things that come into effect, like my own personal life and the assets. And I'm working on this with a few different people too. I'm going to shout them out. A friend of mine, Impulse Man, has actually provided a lot of the assets. So as much as I'm doing some asset work, he's doing a lot of the asset work too. So it's kind of dependent on that. Realistically, I'd say the mod is probably going to be out by the end of summer or maybe October latest. But again, it can really vary. Ideally, middle of summer. Realistically, October. Any later than that, something's probably come up, and I've had to deal with that. And,
yeah. Well, by all means, man, take your time. I mean, this looks incredible. I hate to see this rush. So yeah. Is there anything else you want to add?
Not much. One thing I'll say is that for anyone on PC who's listening, I'm going to be going through a bit of a beta period where I kind of have some different people with different specs test out the mod. Obviously, I don't think one piece of hardware is good enough to kind of test how the mod performs and what it does. And obviously, there's going to be people out there with less powerful hardware and more powerful hardware, and then there's going to be people with Xboxes who are stuck on a static hardware. So that's definitely something. If you're on PC and you can contact me, I'm going to be sending out beta files in a few months or whenever the mod gets to a point where I feel like I can start doing beta testing, because I really want to have some sort of performance testing down with this mod. I don't want it to be like ReGrowth where I just throw it out there and it's a technical mess, and you got to have like a supercomputer to run it from NASA.
Right.
So.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming out, and I appreciate your time. This has been Flopkin here with mod author Spiffyskytrooper. Links to his YouTube channel, Discord, Bethesda.net page, Nexus page, and any other links we can think of will be in the video description below. Spiff, any parting words?
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see some coverage of the mod before it even comes out.
Yeah, man,
it's really
no
cool.
problem. Thanks for coming out. I really appreciate you doing this. All right, so that was the interview with Spiff about Flora. I hope you guys found it interesting and hopefully learned a couple things. This is going to be a pretty exciting mod to keep up with, and I can't wait for the day we can finally download it. I also hope you all enjoyed the video, as this was something new I decided to try. So if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like, and if you're not already, be sure to subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks for watching.